I have to really get this going. So, okay, perfect. Right on time. I'm so excited to be here at Ignite. Some of you might have seen me in the booth, but we'll start off, and let's see if the clicker works. I should have tested that. There we go. So hopefully you're here to learn about Xamarin and taking your C# code, leveraging Visual Studio, and building amazing iOS and Android applications. But first, you may be asking yourself, who's this guy? Well, that's me in 8-bit form. I am like other presenters here from the wonderful city of Seattle, Washington. Yeah. I'm not from there originally. I'm actually from Cleveland. So, that's about the usual response, like, go Browns. Woo. But I really actually moved to Seattle mostly for the coffee, let's be honest. That's the only real reason I moved there. Not because I wanted to take a job as a mobile developer, but really because when I walk in the streets of downtown Seattle, I go to this little place called Monorail Espresso right downtown. If you go to Seattle, it's the best coffee in all of Seattle. You get a burnt cream latte from Coast on a Sunday. And you sit there, and he's taken the milk, and he's just mixing it with the espresso. You can just see like his passion that he has for crafting these amazing beverages. And that's the same passion I have for mobile application development. And that's why I'm here today. You can find me everywhere on the internet. I tweet. I post, you can email me. I made it really simple, james@xamarin.com. But here, you guys aren't here to learn about me. You want to learn about Xamarin and leveraging C# and .NET across all these amazing platforms. Now, if you came to TechEd or maybe saw some things at Build, in the past, we only really covered the Xamarin platform. And this is where we're, of course, leveraging C# to build out iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows apps all in Visual Studio. But I'm going to cover the entire gambit of Xamarin, because really we are your complete mobile solution anywhere you want to go. So we're going to tackle and look at the Xamarin platform, but we're also going to take a look at testing as well. How do we test and ensure great mobile applications across a wide variety of devices? Also monitoring, get crashlytics and analytics once our apps are out in the wild. And of course, where can we learn all of this as well with Xamarin University? Now, if you're not familiar with Xamarin, I'm going to give you a brief 101 of kind of how we architecture and structure our applications. It's a very unique approach that we have, enabling you as a C# developer to take your love and passion for C# and .NET and build a shared C# backend for your mobile applications. Now, this slide is brand new because during this presentation, you're going to see actually not just the client, but the server side of things as well. And what's unique here is that if you're building a C# server, maybe it's running on Azure or over on Linux with the core CLR or Mono, you're having C# everywhere. And in fact, when I was building out this demo with Miguel de Acaza, our CTO, he said, well, it'd be great if we just kind of shared a lot of code everywhere. So this is the first time I got to really interact with a lot of server devs. And we actually built a shared C# client-server library as well. So it's not just about that code in your app, it's about the code on your server and what's shared across everything. Now, what you can see on here on the top, your left, is that you're building unique user interfaces for iOS, Android, and Windows. You do all of that inside of Visual Studio, and you get to take advantage of all of the APIs as well. So you get to create great native experiences with beautiful user interfaces. Now, that's one of our approaches. But we also have Xamarin Forms, which I'll talk about as well, which even allows you to share even more code by, oh, one too many. Where'd it go? There we go. So we can see the before and then after. Share more code by allowing you to leverage a shared user interface, all native across the platforms. Now, this is all C#, but you saw a sneak peek. If you're an F# developer, any F# developers? Oh, no. It's an amazing language. It blows my mind whenever I see it. I never want to write it. I'm like, whoa, you did all that in 2 lines of code. I'm going to never do that. Thank you. I'll take curly braces. And yeah. But you can do all of this in F# as well, which is awesome. So really how this is working under the hood, though, is that if you're a Windows developer, you have .NET. You have all these amazing libraries, SystemNet HTTP, XML, Link, the things that we know and love as .NET developers. Now, when you go to any platform, you have platform-specific APIs that you take advantage of. You install a new SDK, you have WPF libraries, you have Windows Phone libraries, you have server libraries. It doesn't matter. These are platform-specific libraries that you're tying into. You can think now with Xamarin, if you want to move to iOS or Android, you have the same exact things available to you. So here on iOS, we have all of the .NET libraries, a vast majority of them, I would say, available to you that you can all write and build that shared layer, that platform-independent code, and then you have some new APIs to learn for iOS. Everything that's built into UIKit or iBeacons, because we give you 100% API access across the board, all in C#. So you don't have to write Objective-C or Java. Any Java devs? OK, Q, you just uppercase a few things? Like C#, you're good. Objective-C, I don't know. It's just brackets and stars, and I don't know what's going on over there. So, but the best part is that we give you 100% API access. And we add C# features. So async await, Lambda, link support, delegate support, eventing, things that we know as C#.NET developers. And of course, the same thing is true over here on Android, my personal favorite platform, because it's crazy. It's like a beautiful disaster. Android devs know. They're like, ugh. But then it all comes together, and you're like, I have no idea how that worked. But it did. So there we go. That's kind of the base coverage. And of course, you can do all of this inside of Visual Studio. So anything you can do in Objective-C, Swift, or Java, you can do it in C# in Visual Studio with Xamarin. And this is our Xamarin T-shirt store app, actually, that you yourself can order your own free C# or F# T-shirt, download the app, modify a few lines of code, and you're off to the races, which is pretty cool. We ship worldwide completely for free. So I hope everyone has a free C# represent. I saw a few walking around. There's some really nice purple ones that are exclusive from a little bit ago. So when I came, and I give demos often, and I thought to myself, and I was chatting with Miguel, and I said, Miguel, you know, it would be interesting to do something different this time around. Let's tell the whole story. Because, you know, I usually bring up like a Twitter chat client, and you're like, this is fun, and then you're like, oh, let's go, you know, search RSS readers, but let's do something a little bit more. So this was actually the conversation I had right off of Google Hangouts, but themed in an iOS way. So I asked him, like, you know, what are we going to do? Have a lot of new app ideas, and you know, WhatsApp sold for a lot of money, so let's just, you know, take over that market. So we wanted to build a brand new application. We had 2 weeks to do this, and that's kind of a tall order for building an entire chat application. And really, when we took a look at the market, it's a huge crowded space. There's a lot of chat applications out there, all doing different use cases. So what we did, luckily enough, is we needed to find some differentiators in the market. How are we going to go out and craft the most beautiful chat application to demo to you guys here? Well, luckily, Silicon Valley was just added to HBO Go. So Miguel and I binge watched it the first weekend. And we came up with some lessons that we learned from Silicon Valley. So you can go off and start your own business after this. So we were able to, you know, build our own successful startups. These are our business plan, execute, deliver, test. This is what we learned. So this is the Silicon Valley 101. So Silicon Valley, first point, find a huge, large market. So of course, chats, everyone has cell phones. So how do we differentiate ourselves in that large market? Well, when you think about it, there's a huge untapped market here. Children. Children. I was a child once, still am. It's a huge untapped market. Potential here. There's over 1.9 billion children in the world, according to Wikipedia. So, and you can take that with a grain of salt. It's Wikipedia. I've read it on Wikipedia. Must be true. Put it in my report. And here's what's interesting. You know, Terry Myerson, he said, we want to get Windows on 1 billion devices. It's not thinking big enough when you think about it. We're going to go everywhere. But there's a unique approach in an even larger market, which is that for every child, there's about an average of 1.8 concerned parents. And that is a huge untapped market that we could tie into here. So there's our first lesson, large market. Next is we got to find a differentiator. How are we going to differentiate our application from all these other applications in the world? Well, I have a family. I have parents. I'm not one myself. But we want to make this application family-friendly. And we want to make it secure so any parent doesn't have to be concerned about their children going off and talking to people that they don't know. So we want to make sure it's easy to get on board. They don't have to worry about it. And it's catered towards this market. It's family-friendly, so the whole family can use it. But of course, we have to find a nice product market. And what's interesting here is when you look at the parent market, it's very opinionated. It's kind of like Ruby on Rails. It's a very opinionated set of principles that it has. And that's kind of what I've kind of seen with parents as well. And we're going to target that opinionated group of parents and leverage what we call helicopter parenting. You might have heard this phrase before. If you haven't, it's kind of when parents kind of hover, kind of like your boss at your office. You call it helicopter bossing, I guess. And there's really nothing more opinionated than parents. So this is our third point that we want to do. But then, of course, once our app's out on the market, we need to find a way of growing our market. And there's a few things that we're going to do. We're going to build this application I'm going to show you, and we're going to use best practices in the industry. So we're going to gamify, because gamification is hot right now. And we're going to gamify parenting in a way that you have your application that your children are using, but we want to ensure that parents are doing their due diligence. So we're going to use points and badges, and then we're actually going to shame parents into being better parents with leaderboards. So you can actually see yourself against other parents. Because what we want to do is create an environment that's safe for children, that they feel comfortable and family-focused. So if I'm chatting to Jamie in the back room, then my parent can come in and kind of be that middleman to make sure that we're not planning anything devious. I remember as a kid, I was always planning devious things. Mostly my sister did. She was the eldest one. I learned everything not to do from her. So I was kind of the golden child. And then I asked my parents, after I graduated college, I went back home and I visited. And I said, I was like a pretty good child. And they said, no, you were not. And I was like, what do you mean? I thought I was perfect. So today I'm going to introduce our application that brings Silicon Valley 101 into a new application that we call KinderChat. Oops. There we go. Whoa. KinderChat. So it's all about privacy and ensuring that the dangerous world out there is kind of hidden away and protected from the kids, and that our parents are able to monitor. So I'm just going to show it here. I'm going to switch over to my monitor, and we're just going to run through the application. Month 7. There we go. Perfect. So I'm here on my Mac right here, and I have my Android emulator over here and my iOS simulator over here. So the application is going to start up on both iOS and Android. There we go. This is pretty good. And we can see that there's a few conversations going on here. But let's actually just tap through it. We have a little friends. So here's all my friends that I have. And what you can see right away is we're taking advantage of all of the latest material design metaphors in both of the an Android application and a unique user interface over for iOS to the design paradigms there. The tabs are on the bottom on the left-hand side for iOS and on the top for Android, and this nice material design theme. And we can see there's something interesting going on. It looks like, oh, got some live chats coming in. Jamie says hi. That's Jamie in the back room. Hey, Jamie. That's cool. There we go. Oh, and emojis work. That's good. That's the first time I've seen that. That's good. I like that. All right, so we also see that we have some, looks like Darth and Luke are having a conversation here. It's interesting. So Luke over here, obviously, is very upset. So let's see. Well, we don't want to join, so obviously, we want to say, he told me enough. He told me you killed him. That's not good. No, I don't believe you. It's Darth and Luke. There we go. There we go. I think that's about right there. I don't think that's good. There we go. All right, cool. So you get the idea. So this is actually, even though it's on the same machine, this is actually hitting multiple Azure services and server buses to actually talk in real time. But what's interesting here is that as Luke and Darth are chatting, you might say, well, James, that just looks like a chat application. So what's unique and what's private and what's happening here in KinderChat? Well, what's interesting is that we implemented a security protocol on top of these chat communications. So when I started a conversation, Jamie started a conversation with me, we actually exchanged each other's public keys. So we're encrypting all the messages with public keys that then are then encrypted and sent across so I can then decrypt the message on the other side. So at no point in time is the message ever not encrypted. And that's really interesting because when you think about when WhatsApp started up, actually none of the messages were actually encrypted at all. They're all just free text, and you could go in and actually get there, which is really interesting. So we wanted to make a way that no matter what, parents could go in and actually ensure that this is being private and protected for their children. Because obviously the normal mom or parent doesn't want to figure out crypto on the back end. They just want it to work. So we did a few other things here. So we have our Friends tab, and we can come into our Friends tab, and we integrate into the different SDKs, so I can pick a contact, and there's me. I found Mott, so that's good. There's me right there. Start up a chat communication log. If I go over to Profile, for instance, I have these nice little avatars. If I wanted to really confuse, let's say Luke, we could just maybe pick Yoda there. That's no good. We'll upload that photo to the server. Come back over here. Let's refresh my friends list next time we come in. There we go. That's been updated there. Now, of course, I'd probably want to refresh my name, so we'll just go Yoda. Now we've really confused Luke. Who is really his father? No one knows. No. So when we're on this page here, this is the unique part that comes in. So we also have the ability here to add this little button that says Link to Parent. And this is kind of that middleman that comes in. So when you have your kid and they install KinderChat, you link them to your account. So now you're the administrator of the chat communications. So anything that Luke is sending across the wire, you get to say, yep, nope, that sounds good. It's kind of like a bonsai tree. So as the bonsai tree is growing and these new relationships, you get a few bad branches. You just got to clip them off. So that, in a nutshell, really is KinderChat across the board. But I really like Hipster Cat. This probably might be my favorite photo. I don't know if I have I don't know if Microsoft is allowing me to use that, but I'm using it anyways. So that's adorable. So that's KinderChat in a nutshell, going back and forth, being able to do these real-time chat communication back and forth. But let's see how we architected it. So I'm actually just going to dive into Visual Studio here. So I'm going to go and drop these down here. So I'm going to tell you about my setup, because this looks pretty confusing to some people. Like, you're on a Mac, now it's Visual Studio, what just happened? So I'm on a Mac because I'm doing iOS work. Android work, completely fine. Mac, PC, doesn't matter. iOS, Apple likes to keep everything on a Mac. So when you're building for iOS, you just have to have a Mac somewhere. I'm here on a MacBook Pro, but it could be just a Mac Mini on your network, and you're connected to it. So built right into Visual Studio, though, we have different tooling. So here's our entire application here that is set up. So we have a full storyboard designer. And let me actually just show you this at a high level. So it's actually a relatively complex application with multiple lists and data. What we can see on the right-hand side is we have a full toolbox with every single control that's available. There's a lot of lists of data, so you're not seeing tons of visual elements, but you're seeing kind of a startup walkthrough flow here for sign-up process. And then if I wanted to, I could drag a control onto the page, and then there it is. And I can start implementing that in the background. So this is me structuring out a full application. And if we look at how we structure this here, it's really interesting. I have one solution for everything. So I have my iOS application, Android application, I have an Apple Watch application as well, my server client code, and also analysis and tests and account. We actually built an entire console application to test this as well. So it's more than just iOS or Android. So we have our iOS designer, but let's take a look even at our Android designer here. So here's our first login page where a child can pick a theme, blue or pink if they want to. You saw the different themes earlier. And what this is doing here, again, we're inside of Android now, so we have all of our toolbox items available. I could come in and search for a button. These are the native Android widgets, and I can actually go ahead and drop these right in there. And what's that doing is generating Android XML for me. So it's the native way that you're actually building the user interfaces. And Android XML is just like XAML, but completely different. It has all the good parts, except for data binding. So, and you can see Google really wanted you to know that it's Android. It's just Android, 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 Android. So I actually like Android quite a bit because I'm a XAML type of guy, so I was able to leverage over. But we handle that for you automatically. So if you were already to have these storyboard files or Android files, they all come over 100% because your Xamarin applications compile down into a native application running natively. So let's go ahead and we have that. But let's actually look at that upload process that I have. And we can take a look here at actually our shared code. And this is what I think is extremely interesting. I'm using a local SQLite database to store all my messages once they come in. So I have a Kinder database here on my data layer. I have all my models, and of course all my view models. I like to structure things in an MVVM type of way. How many of you are familiar with MVVM? Quite a few. If you're not, it is exactly like MVC, more V's, more M's. All right, so if you don't know, it's just a way of abstracting your user interface away into a nice portable library. So I have all my models and view models, which are representation for my screens. So if I actually looked at a message here, for instance, I have a was sent, a text property, sender, recipient. I actually have some ignore flags on here as well for different parsing, a friend photo, and a name that I want to display. But if I look at my base view model, if you're used to MVVM, iNotify property change is probably our best friend. It enables that anytime something is changing in the background, update the user interface. Now, built into iOS or Android, there is no MVVM framework, but there's no reason that you couldn't use MVVM structure in iNotify property changed. You just go ahead and register for events. But there's other frameworks that help as well. But we can see here at the end of the day, I'm just calling my good friend on property changed, and we're good to go. So if we look at the profile view model, I have a method here called pickPhoto. And pickPhoto will go off, and I'm using this thing called crossmedia.current.isPickPhoto and then I'm async awaitifying here, a way of picking a photo asynchronously. So we saw that in the demo where I picked the photo. And here I have a way of sending toast, but this is all cross-platform. So you might be asking, well, James, how am I actually picking photos or taking photos from the camera, but I'm in shared code? Well, we're .NET developers. We can abstract away the world. So all we did is we implemented an interface that went out and actually natively picks off how to pick and take photos and return a file back to us. So here's why I love C# and I love writing apps in Xamarin. So here I simply say, let's pick a photo asynchronously. When I pick it, if it's null, return null. Else, let's go ahead and upload it asynchronously. If I go into this method, this is lovely. I go in, I create a user manager, I get my stream, I add this avatar asynchronously. It returns from the server. This right here is in my server stack. I added a custom avatar. And then I just go into my settings, and I track a few more properties, and I'm done. And we can rig this up in our code behind. So if I look on Android, here, I go off and I find an image here. So I'm inside of Android, and I say, give me my image view. And then whenever I click on it, I'll ask my user, do you want to pick from gallery or take a photo? And then I just call that pick or take photo property, and that's it. And the same thing is true over here on iOS. I have a method that's called take avatar. It's the same exact code. I could probably even clean this up and put more of this code in the shared code as well. So that's kind of my code behind. It's not that much. The hard work is being done in my shared code, because that's 50, 60, or 70% of your application. So we only really want to do that once. So that's kind of how we've structured the application across the board, to leverage high code reuse all inside of Visual Studio, and at the same time designing and implementing our applications all right here. So let me jump back over to slides really quick. Perfect. Now that we have our application up and running, we did a little bit of use case studies on it. And we have our Kinder Chat app, and we put it out into the market for all of our Xamarins to test. And what we found is that we really wanted to encourage app usage. And we really wanted to make it easy to do multiple things in the application, but also to make sure that people are coming back to the application time and time again. And this is important because it's a crowded space. There are so many applications out on the market. So we want to ensure one thing, easy onboarding. So zero friction is what we wanted to get. Because kids nowadays, they don't want to have to remember, the toddler population isn't going to be able to remember passwords of complex schemes. So we made it so you can register with just an email or just a phone number. It sends and uses either Twilio or SendGrid on the back end to actually tie it back into the integration, and it sends you a code to verify. So easy up and getting started. And we also wanted to make sure that this service could be used by anyone. Because Facebook, for instance, you got to at least be 18, so there's no kids under 18, and we wanted to make it very user-friendly on the back end. But to make sure that people are coming back and forth into the application and make sure these kids aren't going outside of KinderChat, we wanted to gamify. So not only parenting gamification, but also gamify the application with Kinder Achievements, a points hub, and a point exchange. So for instance, you could go off and you could get different points inside the application for maybe eating your broccoli, brushing your teeth. And this is where the parents come in as well. So the parents come in and on their smartwatch, on their Apple Watch, they can go approve. Did little Johnny actually eat his broccoli? You get points. And then exchange those for real-world rewards, like going to Disney World or ice cream. Disney World, that's a big gift. So maybe don't start there, but maybe you get like an ice cream treat or something like that, right? There we go. Because, like I said, mom doesn't want to have to worry about her kids. They want to make sure that we're out doing things and returning and keeping everything inside of this application. But this feature of gamification, Miguel said, like, hey, you're about to go demo this. You should add some gamification. And that was like a day before the demo. So I said, of course, we'll just throw that feature in. That doesn't sound like feature creep at all. So we threw it into the application really quick. But we had some hard times prototyping this out because we didn't know what it was going to look like. And we kind of had some struggles with it. And that's where our brand new product that I'm unveiling here is our Xamarin Inspector. And I'm going to show you this here inside of on my Windows PC. So I have another PC here. Hopefully that comes up. That is not it. Doesn't look like it, at least. There we go. Oh, that is not it either. One more time. Third time a charm. There it is. So I'm here on my Windows 8 machine. And this is the Xamarin Inspector. And we're using the Xamarin Android player over on Mac. It's our high-speed free emulator for Android. We have the same thing over here on Windows as well. So, okay, so I'm inside of my inspector, and I can do things. We found that the problem with normal development is that I make changes to my code or changes to my user interface, and I want to see it on different emulators, screen sizes. So you're in this cycle of coding, building, debugging over and over and over again. So what we decided was it would just be great if we just had a REPL, so read, eval, print loop. And here, for instance, I'm inside my inspector screen, so I could do something like maybe 5 plus 5. And we got 10. That's good. I could say just, hello world. That's good. It just prints out a string for me. So I can play around with C#. I could say maybe James. There we go. And I could print out X. So we're getting some real time here. Let's see if this works. Let's use a, this is my first time using the inspector here. So it's my first demo ever. You guys are my first demo with the inspector. So some C#, well, that works. A little C#6 action. I love C#6. So that's pretty cool. And we have our different just C# in there. But of course, we want to actually go over and we want to investigate some things. So I'm going to go over and say select view. And you can see I'm actually having a hover over here, and I can select that. And I get all of the different properties over there. So we can see that it says the selected view is a text view. So I'll say selected view. There we go. We see it's Laurent. I'll say selected view dot, there's all my IntelliSense. So I'll say text equals hello ignite. There we go. It updates in real time. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to redeploy my application. And that's pretty nice, but let's go ahead and do something a little bit more. Let's go in and let's do this. Let's go, here's our view group, and we could say selected. I just like seeing what I'm selecting here. We have a linear layout. Here's my little tab strip. So we've selected this, and we could say selected view. That's cool. So now I could say selected view dot maybe indicator height. Maybe we'll set that to 10, so it's a little bit bigger there. Kind of test out the different sizes. Maybe I'll do text size, maybe 40. Uh-oh. Selected view. Text alpha, text caps. That doesn't look good. Indicator color, height. Maybe we'll set that back down to 40. Ooh, that's not good. All right, so you can kind of see we can play around with a few things here. But actually, let's go ahead and investigate a few things over here. So, and it actually updates. So it's a real application now running. We're running into a few problems. Here's our first profile. And this is no good. So this is actually an issue we ran into right away. So when we're prototyping is, this all looks good down here. But up here, I can see I have a circle image view. And that's interesting. Let's bring in a few usings. In chat, let's go ahead and bring in Android. So you can bring in anything that you want to use. So here, let's go ahead and see. Let's see my selected view. There's an image there. We'll say selected view dot. And we could set an image. We could come in. Maybe we could set an image resource. That'd be interesting. Let's go resource dot drawable dot IC. So this is everything inside of my application. So let's see. Does broccoli have the same issue? Oh, broccoli. Oh, no. Let's try this. Uh-oh. Namespaces. There we go. We got broccoli. We see we have some more issues. This is no good. So let's do selected view dot scale. That's interesting. We have our image. Let's see this image here. That's interesting. You think I would memorize this? Well, I can see my different properties, and that's good. So you can see we have all the IntelliSense in here. I don't want to spend too much time remembering what I need to set for the scale, but we have a problem over here too. So let's go over to my point. So we can see this is different composite views going on here. And now we have a new image, or the new text view. So what's interesting here is I could come in and say selected view.text and set this equal to text and say maybe this is going to be really large number. And now we can see our issues coming up. Because our selected view has thousands. Maybe our kid's doing very, very well. So now let's instance changing and modifying some code, and our user interface is going all over the place. So let's set lines. There we go. So we're going to set a single line to true. There we go. That looks pretty good. But now we have a dot, dot, dot. So that's not quite better. So let's go in and say selected view dot ellipses. There we go. We'll set this to Android dot text utils dot text utils dot truncate at, and let's marquee it. And let's go ahead and say selected view dot selected equals true. There we go. Now it's marqueeing in real time. So we can actually get real-time updates of our user interface all right here. So as I'm modifying and I'm prototyping out, how do I want it to perform? Do I want to set the text size smaller? Do I want it to be larger on there? And change any of the properties that you could in the property pane as well. So what's interesting here, though, is that if I close this, here's our inspector. I could actually inspect the inspector. So I can come in. Because we have this available for iOS, Android, and WPF applications, and Mac applications as well. So now I can come in and I can actually see what the selected view here is and get everything for WPF as well. And now we can see that there is no about anymore. It's just question marks. So that's pretty cool. In real time, being able to modify without actually have to recompiling any of my applications on Mac or PC. Thanks. Now, something that's not yet in the WPF version, and maybe if you guys really want me to, I'll demo it, is this really cool exploded view too. So do you guys want me to demo that? Yeah, OK. Let's do that. So like, who doesn't want to see that? OK, so this is something coming up soon. So I'm actually going to switch over really quick to Xamarin Studio here. And we're going to redeploy our application. I just have to add one little command here. So there's this application. Let's go up and pull up our application. And what's really nice is that all of this is all NuGetized as well. So I'm going to go into my iOS application. You can see this is the same project that I opened over in Visual Studio. I'm going to add enable REPL. Magic words here. Set a startup project. Let's go ahead and do this here. Now I'm going to pull up the Xamarin Inspector here on a Mac. So if you were on a Mac already, this would kind of be your experience for doing iOS application development. So it's going to go ahead and relaunch KinderChat here. Go over to our preview here. It should be this one. Let's inspect it. A little bit different view. Let's go ahead and maybe tap on this here. Whoa. Look at that. Spin it. That's a cool demo. So what's really interesting here, though, is that, and the same thing's true on Android, that these views are all composite views sitting on top of each other. So now I could go in and I could select which one do I want to select here, and then I could switch back to my REPL and then say selected view and get that property as well that's expanded. So that's really cool, being able to go through, whether you're on Mac or PC in Xamarin Studio or Visual Studio, to be able to do different application development like this. And again, the idea is simplifying and delighting developers to ensure that the development experience is really great. So I'm going to jump back before I get into the next demo, and I wanted to show you a little bit more of the use cases here that we have. So one thing I didn't show is that when you're developing in C# and .NET, it's not just about the iOS and the .NET APIs available to you. If I go into my NuGet package manager here, you have the full power of NuGet available as well. I'll be giving a talk tomorrow on Office 365 and ADAL. What we can see here is I'm using different HTTP clients, a crypto library, JSON.NET, settings libraries, SQLite, and even Insight. So what I'm doing here is I'm leveraging all of our amazing .NET libraries in all of our applications. So you don't have to go build your own JSON deserializer. It's just built in because you have JSON.NET or any of your other favorite libraries that are out there. So kind of take advantage of all of that. OK. Let's see here. If it switches. Oh, that's the same screen. That's why. There we go. Cool. So I talked mostly about the traditional native approach to Xamarin development, building that shared C# backend out. But I did mention a little bit about Xamarin Forms in the beginning. So when we were building this application, we found it really difficult to get different server statistics. So like how many new people are registering, or what's the favorite avatar on the server, what are people doing, and what's the different times. We also wanted a way as the creator of the application to be able to administrate my users. So what we did is we built into the framework a way for kids to actually report users, to say that's they were being bad or a bad image, so we could then go check and investigate this later. So we use Xamarin Forms to build this administration application, because on this approach, we're building out those beautiful native user interfaces, but sometimes you just need to do some forms over data, some data entry application, and we wanted to make sure that you could get up and running easily. So Xamarin Forms brings in that shared C# UI layer as well. And what's all included out of the box with that is a few things. We enable you to build your iOS, Android, and Windows applications with 40+ pages, layouts, and controls built all in C# or in XAML with data binding built in. We give you, of course, that two-way data binding system. Since it's all in XAML, it'll be a very familiar syntax. A navigation paradigm, animation API, a dependency service, and also a messaging center as well. So when you're coming to MVVM world with Xamarin Forms, you're going to feel right at home. So for instance, this is an example of maybe what a login page would actually look like. So if we actually go through the code, up top we have some tabbed pages. So we have 2 tabs here. And we have this content page with a stack layout and some entry fields and a button that are all data bound back and forth. And what's unique here is that it's very familiar XAML markup and syntax that's available to you. But it's our controls in our properties. So it's not going to be a one-to-one mapping per se, but you'll easily pick it up with all the IntelliSense features as well. So that's really awesome. So here's the application we built, and I'm actually going to write some code. This is really happening. Like, I'm going to write code. I'm not even going to lie about it. So we built the Matriarch app. So this enables us to actually go in and monitor across iOS, Android, and Windows all of our different applications. So actually, let's go ahead and take a look at building applications with Xamarin Forms. So I'm going to switch back over here to 7. And I'm going to go ahead and shut down this here. So I'm going to go first, and we're going to take a look and see what's running, and then we're going to extend it to see how easy it is. All right. So here's this. We'll go ahead and launch the Matriarch app here. Close down Xamarin Studio real quick. There we go. Now we're going to go back over to Android, and we're also going to launch it here as well. Now what's interesting here is I built this entire application in about an hour. So what I was able to do is I was able to leverage our shared server-client library and then build out a unique user interface on top of this. So obviously, KinderChat building that enabled us to build that library and build that application in just under 2 weeks. But here, for instance, I have names, so I can see the most popular names that were registered, how many people were registered on each day. And we can see here that we have the unique iOS and Android user interface with still tabs and icons on each side. And I can even see flagged users here as well. And I can go in and see if anyone's flagged. Nope, no one's flagged here today. OK, so this is interesting. But what I would really like to get access and information to is maybe the most popular avatars. So let's see and take a look at how this was built. So I'm going to switch back over to Visual Studio. And I'm going to open up this solution. But I'll show you where to get started first. If you never got started with Xamarin, when you install Visual Studio, we support all versions of Visual Studio, 2010 and up. I encourage 2012 and up. That'd be nice. Built into 2015, when you install it, and there's an optional just to install Xamarin right at startup, and you'll be good to go. And then you get some new project templates. So here's all my Android project templates. Over here we have iOS. So if I'm doing an Apple Watch application or an iPhone application, just one button click, you're up and running. And then Xamarin Forms lives under this mobile application. And this is going to give you all your cross-platform structure here. So if I actually just go and I say, give me a blank Xamarin Forms application, let's put this not in there. We'll put it in projects. Look at all those. We'll create this up. App 20, best name ever for an app. Of course, we want to save everything I just did. So here we can see this is going to spin up my application for a brand new Xamarin Forms application. And it's going to add my iOS, Android, Windows application. And it's also going to give me my shared portable class library here as well. And at the same time, it's going to download all the NuGet. So we expose Xamarin Forms, since it's just a library that sits on top of Xamarin, as a NuGet package. So let's see if our NuGets will work nice with us here. Come on, Windows Phone. Do it. That's what happens when you deviate away from your demo flow. Oh, it's busy. At least it tells you it's busy. It's like, hey, listen, I can't do anything right now. Give it another few seconds, and then we'll, oh, there we go. There we go. Magic of a NuGet pulling in. So here we go. This is really nice, though. File new, and this is the same if you weren't doing Xamarin Forms. You can go in and say File New Project, and it'll set up your entire portable class library, Windows Phone, and Android project there for you. So let me pull up the Matriarch app, though. We're going to actually go ahead and extend this a little bit here. So what I've done is I've brought in, I still have my iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. I also added a Windows Store application. We also have support for Windows Store. And what we'll see down over here is that I've added that server client library, which is the same server client library that I was using inside of KinderChat, which is really nice. So that's that shared code story. So I'm going to go, everything here is done inside of my portable class library. As soon as Visual Studio is done, there we go. So again, I've structured everything here in an MVVM type of way. I have my view models and my views, though. So I actually put all my views right inside of here. So my main page that I have that I'm displaying is actually a tabbed page. and it has a list of children. And we have the 3 different tabs. So if we look at our names, XAML, so it's pretty straightforward. I have a content page. I bind the title here to a title property. I have a list view and an item template and a data template. This should hopefully look a little familiar. You can create your own data templates and items. We have our own cells that are built in out of the box, which is very nice. But what I'm going to do here is we're going to add some code into our statistics avatar. So here is just a blank stack layout here for us. And we're going to add some code. So let me look at the code behind really quick that I have written this already. So this is my statistics view model. I have an avatar that I want to display that has a count, a URL, a location on it. And I just have a few different properties, such as execute load stats and a load stats command that's on here. And it's using my admin manager and an avatar manager for my client server. And I add things to a list, and I'm good to go. So what we want to do is we want to data bind this up. So we're going to come in here, and we're going to say, let's put an activity indicator, so like maybe a little spinner. We'll say is running, and we'll do binding to is busy. And we'll say is visible, so only show that if that is busy as well. There we go. Close that off. We can do that. I think I also have a way of, what other properties do I have on my view model? Oh, I also have a count. So to go out and see how many avatars I currently have. So let's add a label here. So add a label. There we go, label. And we'll say text equals avatar count. Those are all stacked up, and we'll do another label, and then we'll say text, do a binding here of count. There we go. Then we're going to create our list view. So the list view here, we're going to have an item source. And that here, I should actually just go ahead and do something like this. There we go. Put that there. I could come here and I can see, well, this is my avatars observable collection. So that'll automatically do our binding for us. So here's our avatars. There we go. Now, avatars are unique because they actually have images associated with them. So we're going to go into our list view, our item template. We're going to create a new data template. That's there. And we're going to use an image cell, which is kind of like a text cell, but it has an image. So it has some text that I'll do a binding on, and we'll make that our location. That'll be good. Let's go down and we'll say our detail, and we'll do a binding to our count. So how many times is that being used currently? And then we'll do the image. Is it image source? Image. I think it's image. Let's do that. We'll do binding to our URL. So this is just kind of straight data binding here that I have in place. And that's kind of it. That's kind of my user interface in place that I want to actually use. Let's make sure that I did that correct so it runs. Open recent. There we go. Image source. I was pretty sure. Even me. I'm not 100% positive sometimes on it. Good old Sublime. There we go. So that's it. There's my little XAML, straight XAML, if you will. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead. Now, if we take a look at the code behind, so we'll get rid of our view model, and we'll take a look at the actual, how do we data bind this up? So over here is my statistics avatars, and I've done a few things. I simply have a content page, which is data binding to my XAML UI. And then I have a binding context. So it's just like your data context, but it's binding context, because we decided to change the name. Why not? And what we'll do here is we'll say on appearing. And when I appear for the first time, let's say if my view model is busy, or my view model.avatars.count is greater than 0, let's return. Else, let's go ahead and execute that load stats command. So it'll go off, and then the data binding will handle it from there. So let's now go ahead and reload this on iOS. There we go. So now what this is doing is I have a connection to my Mac. So I'm still in Windows. I'm inside of VMware with the Unity mode, and I'm connected to my Mac. So I'm actually remotely compiling that application to deploy it on my simulator. And this is nifty because I'm all in one Mac, but you don't have to be per se. Well, that's interesting. My tab's not there. OK. I know what I did. I didn't add it to my tabs. So demo totally worked as expected. So let's go ahead and say children.add. And we'll say new avatars. There we go. Cool. So let's go now and deploy here one more time. So now we have a new tab on the bottom with all my avatars and images downloaded automatically for me on iOS, all in XAML, data bound up. Now, of course, I've done no styling around this. So now I could go in, add styles, behaviors, data triggers, things like that. We could come now, and on my Android application, I could set that as my startup. And we could redeploy this here to my Android Nexus device. So this will go off now and redeploy this. So now we have more tabs up top. Here's my avatars, and it's handled automatically for me. Of course, I can come now back to my Windows Phone application that I have. And this will be interesting. We're going to spin up a Windows Phone emulator inside of VMware with a VirtualBox running at the same time. There's a lot stressing this machine right now. And if you paid really close attention, look at that. I have 3.5 gigs of 16 gigs available. That's how you do it. So if you're buying a Mac, buy all the gigs. We support Windows Phone Silverlight, Windows Phone 8 RT as well. It's wherever you want to go. And we also have UAP or WA, whatever they're calling it now, something in preview as well. But here we have all of our avatars as well. And it's going to load that up, hopefully. There we go. And that'll download all the images and then all of our flagged users as well. So I can go through, and we're using a pivot pane there as well. Let's just, for the heck of it, I haven't actually run it in a bit, but let's actually just try our Windows 8.1 experience here for desktop. So since I'm all in shared code, right now I haven't done any styling on it, but you can actually detect if you're on phone or tablet and adjust your user interface that way as well. Let's see. So here I have a big list of data. That's good. I can come in, go to my avatars pane. We get the actually unique user interface. So we actually don't do any drawing of code. What we're doing is actually laying down the native controls under the hood. So your application is still 100% native there. But of course, you'd want to stylize that up a little bit. But the nice thing here is that if I went into my Windows Store application, I only have one line of code. Everything else is shared across the board. And the same is true for iOS and Android as well. So if you're doing a lot of forms over data types of application, it's perfect for you to kind of get up and running, especially for prototyping. So when we built out these applications, of course, we want to talk about, well, what's the overall arcing shared code story? Because it's great that we can build these unique user interfaces and make beautiful applications that are connected. But what about the shared code story? So here, for instance, KinderChat, the KinderChat application on your left-hand side is anywhere between 50 and 70% shared C# code across the board. Now, the iOS one's a little bit less because we've done a lot of modifications to the user interface, so there's just more platform-specific code, where Android I had to do a little bit less. And then what's interesting here is that 20% of the client server. That is that client server code that is shared not only on KinderChat, but also on the Matriarch administration app as well. So that's 20% of our application, and that's shared on our server as well. But now this application runs everywhere. So we not only have just the phones and tablets, we also have Android Wear, Apple Watch to do the approval, and we took a look at the marketplace. We wanted to ensure that we were crafting great user experiences across the board. Well, what's interesting, if you look at the Android market today, we call this kind of the parent market, is we go out and we get the latest gizmos and gadgets. So when a new version of Android comes out, we go and get the latest version. So we have the highest percent. Well, In the kids market, it's a little bit different. I like to call it a trickle-down device scheme. Because what happens is a new OS comes out, and in the kids market, it doesn't look like this. It looks more like this. Where a few of the children of the percents get the latest nice devices, but you kind of are handing down your devices, so you're trickling down your devices down the family line. And this happened to me when I was growing up. I got like the older car, I got this, So how do we ensure that our applications are running great on all of these platforms where they're flipped? Because we have no idea what the kids market is out there. So that's where Xamarin UI Test and Xamarin Test Cloud come in. And this is a way of creating automated user interface scripts for any of your iOS or Android applications, written in Xamarin or not. So what happened was when I was crafting this up and creating the demo, I wanted to make sure that I was able to, wrong machine. I wanted to actually find some bugs in the application. I was like, oh, I'll just go and maybe create some bugs and maybe go back and forth. And as I was creating some different tests, I actually just found bugs by itself. And that was kind of interesting. I was like, uh-oh. Because I was testing all of my applications on KitKat and Lollipop devices. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to spin up my other emulator. There we go. And I'm going to do this right inside of Xamarin Studio so we can see this. You can write these scripts in both Visual Studio and Xamarin Studio, but it'll just be here. Okay, where is it at? Patriot. So there's our emulator. That's good. Perfect. So we're going to load up the project here. And this is the same solution, so we have our tests. So Xamarin UI Test is a framework enabling you to build C# or Ruby scripts to test your iOS and Android applications. Creating the tests and running them on a simulator is completely free. So everything I'm showing you here, part of your smoke test, is completely free and available to you. So here I'm going to go up, and I'm going to, hopefully, for the emulators and simulators. Once you want to go on a device or ship it to the test cloud, then you have to pay for that. You have the restriction is a 15-minute test run, which is, if you have a test run more than 15 minutes, it's pretty extensive amount of tests. So let me go here into let's see if Xamarin Studio is going to work with me. Again, stressing the machine. Let's close down a few things. One more try. So what we do is we actually bundle up a little component that's going to be running into the application so we can communicate with it back and forth. It's built off a technology called Calabash. So here, for instance, are my test scripts. And we give you a nice C# syntax of being able to access your application. So you can tap on a button, you can enter text, you can clear text. But what I want to do here is I actually just want to run it, and we can actually see what the REPL is going to look like here. So I'm going to run this test. What this will do is it'll package up the application and then start it over here on Android. There we go. So here's this, and then here's my little REPL that's here. So I can come over here now, and this is a little bit different. It's a different REPL. It's a non-visual REPL here. But I can say tree, and here's every single item in my tree. So now I could say app.tap. It's kind of like, we have users, and we're tapping around, and we're creating our own test cases. We want to validate a flow. So whenever I go to create a business test, like I have my unit tests, for my business logic, when I go to my UI, instead of tapping around, I just come into my REPL. So now I can say x.marked, and I'll say, let me go ahead and tap pink, for instance. And now it just goes ahead and selects pink for me. I can go say app.tap, and we'll say, let's go ahead and do sign up. So maybe I want to validate the flow here. So now we can see that the button here, if I go tree again, I get a new tree. And then I can say app.enter text. And we'll enter the text for, it looks like nickname. So let's say marked nickname. And we'll say Mots. There we go. And now it enters the text there. I could go now say app.back, and we could close that down. So I'm kind of building out my test flow here. So what's really nice is that you don't have to remember this. As you're building your test, you'll just say copy. Then if you came back into the test here, we could just go ahead and paste that in. So we handle that for you automatically. There you go. That's pretty cool. So now if I run this, this test again, it'll just handle that all for me automatically. So it runs my test, does pink, enters my name, and I could then do all of my asserts normally, just like my normal N units. But we wanted to validate an entire flow. So here's a more complex flow and application here. So we have our app clear text, we're entering, we're validating some different buttons, and we're waiting for tests. So what we can do here is we can actually run this test, which is a more complex test to check the sign-up flow. And now every single time I add a feature, fix a bug, I can run all my smoke tests here and make sure that everything in the user interface is reacting. I didn't break a user story. Here we go. Welcome to KinderChat, and it's good to go. We even have a more complex one, which we'll see here for messaging. So messaging will run through the entire sign-up process, but also test sending messages back and forth to ensure that that is working as well. Now, of course, you could point this at a test server, at your production server, however you want to test it. So if you don't want to point it out to real-world data, just go ahead and put a debug flag in there and actually do it against local data. So I'm picking a friend, Paul Betts. He's a good friend of mine, works at Slack, really good guy. You should follow him on GitHub. And now we can see this here back and forth. So this test here, everything seemed to be working really great, testing all these different applications. So I took this test, I bundled it up, and I shipped it to our test cloud. And our test cloud is a way for you to test all of your iOS and Android devices on thousands of physical iOS and Android devices in our test cloud. So this part would be the paid version, so this isn't free. But these are real devices in our test cloud, and I can step through my entire application. I can pick one of them. I can see my memory usage, CPU usage. I can get a full screen size snapshot of that view. I can get a console log of everything going on inside my application. If it loads up here on the speedy internet. Maybe. We'll pretend it's there. Sure. Now, here's what was interesting is everything looked good on the startup flow. When I tap on messages, we can see we already have some issues. What happened is I didn't test this application on ice cream sandwich devices on Android. We see we already have a few issues in our user interface. Just things are blocked. Things aren't looking really well at all. So if I go down, we can see that the tests continue to run on any of the devices that it was working on. But as I get down, I open the messages page. I see if the message was sent. Here we go back up here. And I go back to main message. So these are screenshots along the way. What happened is that the test was actually pressing this back button here. There it is. Well, that's way close. And what they did is they changed the flow in newer versions of Android of how you code it. So I was coding against a newer way and not checking for backwards compatibility. So the back button in my application did absolutely nothing, so the test couldn't continue. So all of these devices are now grayed out, but any of the newer Android devices running Jelly Bean or Ice Cream Sandwich continued to run. So if I came back to one of these devices that had been grayed out here with a little mark, we can actually look at test failures, and we can see that it has some different failures, and it wasn't able to continue on because it was waiting to go back to the last page. So that's a way of getting all of your screenshots, snapshots, and different device logs and memory usage as well. So then what we did, now that we have our application tested, is that we put it out into the real world. And what's interesting here, and I couldn't go away without showing this nice fancy diagram of how the app works. This is one that we asked the server guy. Who said, hey, can you draw a diagram for us? And that's what's happening. Because we actually have an ASP.NET website talking to worker roles, talking to a Redis cache, talking to Service Bus, using Notification Hub to push notifications, a permanent WebSocket connection to do real-time chat communication back and forth between the REST services. So this is the application. It's pretty complex. So here's what happened, is we bundled up our application, and we gave it to all of our Xamarins. Well, we happened to have put it on the free version of Azure, and then a few thousand people installed it. And what we didn't realize is that they really liked the application. So it actually brought down the entire server. But so, maybe you want to push to production instead of demo before pushing it to everyone in your entire company. So we actually installed Xamarin Insights, which is our analytics and Crashlytics reporting software. And here we can see, here's my KinderChat application. And if we look here, we get a full overview of all of our reports of our application. And something really unique happened on May 1st. We had about 10,000 warnings that came in, all because all of our Xamarins couldn't have access to the server. So if I came down here and I actually look at my results and I look at count, let's see overall all time, we can see that this is my socket exception that was coming in. And here we can see the different versions of Android that were affected, Android L, iOS 8.4, someone was fancy and upgraded. We get information about all of our user information, and we can see that the message wasn't sent here. And that's really nifty. I could flip through all 5,000 occurrences and get updates on that. But we solved this. We did push to production. We saw it working. We can close that report. We can come back to issues here as well. So this allows me to get overviews, but I actually go in and see, well, we have some warnings and some crashes, but what about my usage? So here, for instance, are all my usages over time and how many people were actually crashing in the application. I could dive into the user details. And for each of my users, I'm setting this up. And let me actually show you the code that we did here. So if I jump back into KinderChat, and if I actually look at the Android application, it only takes one line of code to get up and running. So here's my initialize. So Xamarin Insights initialize. I give it my key. And you can turn on and off and say, how much data do you want to send to the server? And then what I did is I created a little logger utility in my shared code to report and track different events or crashes that are occurring. So now, here inside my user log, I could come in and click on different users, and I could see what device they're using, if it's available, how active they were. But I can also get an entire event log of when they open, close, send messages, anything that I want to track. So now if a user comes and tells me they had a crash in their application, I not only get the crash report, but it ties it back to that specific user. And I can see that they opened and uploaded an avatar, they picked a photo here, and how long those different events were taking to occur. And it's like basically my repo steps at this point. I could come into events, and I track all these different events. And what's really nice is I can see how long did it take. So how long did it take over time to load avatars, or perhaps save the profile, on average of 2 seconds here as well, or upload a photo. We can see 8 seconds. That's not good. It looks like we need to really improve that performance over time. So what's interesting here is that now we have this analytics, and we were able to actually then do some user studies based off of this. So once we got it out there in the toddler population, what we found is that it was really hard for them to pick blue or pink. So we replaced those buttons in a later version with just big colors that they could select in the beginning. But then what we really found out is that toddlers don't really know how to use chat applications. And it's just kind of gibberish. So maybe we need to, you couldn't really see if it was encrypted or decrypted on the server. It was just typing on a keyboard. So maybe we need to reevaluate this whole thing in general. So that's kind of the whole story, bringing it all together from start to finish. So Xamarin Test Cloud, testing all of your applications, and then, of course, Xamarin Insights.
Can you get location data in your Xamarin Insights also?
So by default, so Xamarin Insights, the question was, can you get location data in Insights? It'll do like a rough IP reverse lookup type of thing on it, but you could track additional information if you wanted to. You should be a good citizen and good developer and only track the user information that you users have allowed you to track. We have flags that turn off everything if you want only crash reports as well, or turn on everything as well. You can get started today at Xamarin.com. Download a free 30-day trial, and do everything that you saw here right inside of Visual Studio. And with you guys, thank you so much.